Hi everyone. Today I'm really excited to talk to my new friend, um, Teri Kerr. And what's so special about today's interview is that we just met not long ago, and she's actually living in Victoria, British Columbia, in Canada. And it works out the time zone is actually pretty easy for us to connect. I'm so excited because, it's always lovely to talk to someone from away from Australia, and especially during COVID-19 these days, I can't travel. So this is really exciting for me to talk to someone from another continent. So a little bit about Teri. She's a coach. I think executive coach and empowerment strategist is more the accurate term. She's also an artist, hockey mom, cancer survivor, blogger, speaker, creative warrior. And I think many of us actually share similar interests or life goals in this community who are listening and watching, and often those being interviewed as well. And Teri, she's a certified executive coach through the Royal Roads University and a graduate of the Purpose Project. She lives in, as I said, British Columbia and Victoria with her husband, Jeff, and teenagers, and dog and cat, and I think you mentioned that it's one-eye cat. So
yeah,
that's so obviously a very busy household, and incredible busy woman, because she's also the managing director of the Victoria, British Columbian chapter of eWomen Network in Canada. So obviously you wear many hats, and I'm really excited to be able to connect with you today. So first of all, welcome to my show, Teri.
You're welcome. You're welcome. If I froze, I apologize if I freeze.
Don't worry at all. It's all good. So one of the things really caught my eye when I first met Teri is her website title, because it's actually it's called the Unstuck Duck. So first of all, it's very catchy, but also I love what she wrote on her website about, do you have your ducks in a row? Do you know like how you going? Like, and things like that. It actually totally makes sense, and it really stuck in my mind. And I think a lot of women at some point in their life feeling really stuck. So I'm curious, and I'm also pretty sure at some point in your life, Teri, that you were stuck. So that's why you created this business.
Oh yeah.
So tell me your story.
Okay, so thank you first of all for having me. I appreciate the invitation, and it was actually really serendipitous that we met at the eWomen Network event. I had the time zone just worked. It worked. You guys have it in the morning. It ended up being evening for us, so it worked out perfectly. So a little bit about me. I live in Victoria, British Columbia. I was born and raised on the west coast of BC. So I've been an island girl my whole life. Victoria's on an island. It's just in case for people that don't know that. We live on Vancouver Island. And so my story is I used to work in a corporate job. I was a fundraiser for a university. And I was one of those really high achieving people that was doing 50,000 things at any given time. I had 2 kids that played elite ice hockey, so which is a totally Canadian thing. And we hosted international students. I did my master's at the same time as working full time, and was working a really high stress job. And I ended up getting sick. I ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer in 2015. And I had no family history. I had nothing that would have ever expected that to happen to me, other than I had a really high stress, high energy life. And stress is not good for your body. So my body decided to make me slow down a little bit. And so during that time, I was off work for almost 3 years. I had a very aggressive form of cancer. And when I ended up, I had quite the extensive treatment. And when I went back to work, I realized, am I allowed to swear on your
Yes.
Okay. I would check. I'd call it my give a shit meter was broken. I really didn't care anymore. And I felt like everything that I was doing at work, I was running into trouble because I was just not engaged. I was questioning authority, questioning process, and really just realized that I was not in the right career for me. And so I ended up doing some work and diving a little bit deep into the different ways that I'm doing. I did a program called the Purpose Project, which you mentioned, which is through a company called Be More You here in Victoria. Well, it's not in Victoria, it's in the Pacific Northwest. They're actually based out of Seattle area. And during that time, I just really realized that there wasn't a lot going on in my life that was bringing me joy, that was making me feel like really fulfilled. And so I started navigating the wilderness a little bit. And I had a moment where I realized that I wanted to become a coach. I had been working with a coach, two of them actually. One of them had been given to me through work, and one of them was a friend of mine who was an executive coach that just was a really smart cookie, and I could talk to her about all kinds of things. So I ended up deciding that, you know what, I want to go back to school. So I went back to school, became a coach. So the story about the unstuck duck is I was speaking to another friend of mine through the Purpose Project, who's a branding coach. And she said, well, who's your ideal client? And I said, really, I just want to help people get unstuck. And I was reminded of a little book when my kids were little. Their favorite book was called One Duck Stuck. It was about a duck that got stuck in the muck. And no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get out. So it was a counting book. So it was like, 2 moose clomped to the duck, no luck, still stuck. And it was very, sing-songy, and it became that no luck, still stuck became a mantra in our family. And so, I just really fit. I wanted to help people get unstuck, and I knew that I was not a corporate coach.
Right.
I didn't work that way. I didn't feel like people would take me that way. I would much prefer to work with someone who is looking to get out of their corporate job and into entrepreneurship. So I work mostly with women who are entrepreneurs. I like to say I help smart, competent women who want to navigate the overwhelm of entrepreneurship, so they can create a life that's both fulfilling and profitable. And it's my story, really. That's exactly what my story is I wanted to break out of corporate and into doing my own thing. And I want to help others step into that for their life, whatever it is that they want, and become an unstuck duck.
Yes.
Like me.
Yeah. So many of us have walked a similar journey. And once we actually got through it, the other side, so to speak, we want to help others who may have the same problems or challenges. So it totally makes sense. So let's unpack a little bit, because I think there's so many great things you said, and that we can learn from your story. So number one, what I have observed is that, because I have 2 little kids and one of them is 4 months old, so not exactly like reading books yet, but I find a lot of children books actually got something that can inspire us, because while you have the no luck duck, I have the we're going on a bear hunt as something that I sometimes talked about, because it doesn't matter the circumstances, you cannot go over it, you cannot go under it, to go through it. And a lot of times I found life, it's actually that way, that we gotta keep moving forward. And sometimes we march, sometimes we creep, whatever that is that we take as a strategy approach, we actually still have to get through it. And I think incredible, nowadays I look at children's books, sometimes I turn around and go, actually there's something in this that we can learn from. It can be quite profound. So thank you for sharing us about the duck story. And I think it really sticking in our mind, and it's quite helpful. And the other thing I want to unpack and ask is, with all this time that, you were navigating your own journey, and, and then helping others, like after you have done your part and you go and study coaching and you help other people, and helping them to become more themselves, what do you think typically from your client, from your own experience, that we hold back? And not be the real us, like real you, like what we're trying to be. Because, you know, you were going 100 miles an hour doing 50 things, and yet you actually were stuck. Instead of moving forward, you were doing, but then wake up call happened and actually find yourself actually stuck and not being you. So what do you think is a common factor that put us in that position? One of my guess is social conditioning, that we think doing more is better. Success is the outward thing. So that's one of my guess. But from your experience and from your client, what do you think that put us into this position?
I think, honestly, I think that a lot of it is, like you said, it's social conditioning. You know, many of us have baggage from when we were a child. I skipped a grade and I was always trying to fit in. That was a big thing for me. And I was super smart, but I really didn't want everybody to know that I was smart because it made me stand out and I wanted to fit in. And I have allowed that thought to really hold me back from stepping into myself. For a long time I did. I don't anymore. I mean, now I'm happy to step into roles where, you know, where I am a leader in a leadership position, or, but I also know that, well, classic example. So I'm the managing director of eWomen Network. And the lady that was the managing director before me is a good friend of mine. Her name is Erin. And she was a totally different type of person than I am. She was really organized. She was very controlled. She was quirky. And I mean, I'm pretty quirky, but in a totally different way. And so my fear going into that was I wasn't going to be able to step into her shoes.
But you were not her, isn't it?
I wasn't her. And I don't know really if that was the shoes that needed to be filled in that moment. I mean, we all have our own shoes. And so we try to step into other people's shoes. We try to step into our parents' shoes, or our parents teach us everything that they've learned because that's all they know. So I think a lot of the times with our parents, that's another classic example, is, you know, my dad was an entrepreneur. He taught me to take risks. He taught me, and honestly, he probably didn't teach me to be very prudent in my risks. So that's a different type of baggage than some people who, I've always learned by watching instead of by listening. I need to learn going through life, making the mistakes that I make. That's how I learn. I like to say I go through life with my elbows up. And
what's that mean?
So it might be a Canadian hockey term.
Right. I was wondering that.
Yeah. So when there's 2-minute penalty for elbowing, and you're not allowed to hit somebody with your elbow. Another classic example is going through Costco and it's like super busy. So you're like, elbows up, let's go. And you just power through.
Right.
I like to say that I go through life with my elbows up, and sometimes it's a protective mechanism. And sometimes it's a bit, I'm going to throw a jab and learn the hard way. So it's more about learning the hard way and not in a very kind way. So that's how I've learned a lot of my problems. So like I'll run into my lessons. I will run into a problem with authority at work, for example. It's because I've called somebody out on their inefficiency. Well, that's not the way to get over a problem. That's not a way to go through life. And so I've had to learn those things because I've run into my own downfall of going through with my elbows up.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally. And to be honest, if we know better, we will do better. When we're 20, we can expect ourselves to think like a 30 or act like a 30 years old. I mean, sometimes we just have to make mistakes, but the key is learn from it or see the value in it. Now you realize this may not be the best strategy in life, in relationship. It may be the best strategy in Costco, I don't know. But but what reminded me very interesting here is that I remember I was listening to a lecture by Marianne Williamson, and she said, remember the posture of Christ. It's always like this, like surrender, arms open, like chest open, sort of like this, you know, and she did say like Christ didn't walk around like this, you know. And it's interesting because, you know, when you talk about posture, when you say that, like it visually just came to my mind. And I think, you know, that's what it is. Life experience, sometimes you cannot hypothesize or intellectually imagine. Sometimes you actually have to get into trouble, so to speak, or wake up calls, and everybody have different challenges, and there's no way to say this is bigger than that, you know. So,
and sometimes, so I go through by getting into trouble, but some people go through life playing safe.
yes,
Because they don't want to get into trouble. And sometimes it's because they've had a bad experience with getting into trouble. They've been burned somehow. They've seen somebody else have consequences, and therefore they don't want the consequences. And what ends up happening is somebody will go through life never really playing at any higher level, like always playing safe. And the next thing you know, they're like 65 and they've got their watch from this corporation they've worked at, and they have no idea what they even like. Like you talk about, well, you don't, I have heard people talk about, you know, when you go through the motions of having children with your spouse, you become a very well-oiled machine. And that was the situation with my husband and I. We were a very well-oiled machine. We could make 4 meals in a night, and who was going to practice where, and next thing you know, like, yeah, no problem, we go to bed and start it all over the next day. And what happens is then the kids grow up and move out, and you look at each other and you're like, who is this person that I don't even know? Because we've just been, you know, or we've gotten into these patterns. And when I work with my clients, a lot of the time it's because they've gotten into these patterns. They're procrastinating because they're avoiding something. They're speaking in words like, I need to, and coming from a place of scarcity, like, I need to do this, and I can't do this, and I have to do this. And instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to choose to do this because this is going to move me forward in my business. And I want this because it's going to, you know, make me fulfilled in a day, and wanting and choosing and being that living life on purpose, being intentional about how we move forward.
Yeah.
That's where I want my clients to, well, that's where they grow. That's where they grow the best.
Yeah.
So, it's scary. It's scary. It can be very scary. So
and
I'm here
uncomfortable
to
as
hold
well.
them capable of that.
Yes.
Well,
we'll overlap a bit. Yes, which lead me to the next questions. Actually, the 2-part questions. The first is that, you know, like you said, sometimes we are so good at become a well-oiled machine, military unit, make 4 meals a day, make sure people go to bed at the right time, kids bang, bang, bang. And then suddenly we realize that we actually don't understand our, you know, we don't even know each other. We become, you know, distance, or we're not thinking, like not experience our true feelings or knowing who we are anymore. So first question is, so how do you cultivate a sense of awareness or thinking deeper or become more conscious? So if I'm like in a well-oiled machine right now because my kids are little, so how do you help clients, especially when they don't see it yet, they haven't had the wake-up call yet? So, but I think it's important to point it out. So what would be your advice? How do we cultivate that consciousness?
I think part of it is that feeling of being stuck. And asking, you know, how's that working for you?
Yeah. Why that feeling? Where does that come from? Right.
So you've obviously come to me because you feel stuck.
Right.
And yes, you're an absolute machine. But let me ask you, you know, how's your relationship with your husband? How's your relationship with your boss? When's the last time you took an initiative to do something different? You know, who do you want to be as a mom? How do you want your relationship to be with your kids? Is this it? And often, yeah, sometimes, sure, okay. But often that's when the light bulb goes off. It's like, you know, I want my kids to be able to talk to me about things and not be just looking at the schedule and thinking, okay, well, you know, we have 2 hours in the car and we're going to have these conversations then. I want to be approachable by my children. And if this situation, whether it's the job or whatever it is, isn't working, chances are good there's some symptoms where you'll get that notification. So For example, you know, my kids, my boys are 18 and 20. Okay. They often, I would have to have like a red flag moment, which is like when they get called to the principal's office, or they are doing something completely out of character for what I think they do.
Mm.
And they're doing it for attention, they're doing it for whatever it could be, right? They are feeling that there's a disconnect between me and them, and therefore they don't feel they can talk to me about something. Often with parents, it is a red flag, like self-harm or getting in trouble or breaking the law or something. Like there's with kids, for example, and not always. I mean, every kid is different, but sometimes it's just a conversation that happens at dinner that you're like, whoa, hang on a second here, something isn't right. And then you realize, well, I have realized in those moments that I'm not as connected as I think I am or I want to be. And oftentimes it's simply, who do I want to be? When I think about my relationships, when I think about who I want to be as an entrepreneur, who I want to be as managing director, when that whole concept of writing your own eulogy and what you want people to remember you for and what you want people to, I don't want people to remember me for having dinner on the table on time. That's not how I want to be remembered. And
that you could make 4 meals a night.
yeah, it usually, I do not want my eulogy to say, wow, she's super efficient. She was super effective at her job. I want them to know that I made them feel good. Right. And I want, and that I was fun, and that's what I want. Like that they wanted my opinion on things. They felt that I was important to them and made them feel important. That's what I want. And so when I think about my clients, a lot of the time they feel stuck. They don't know why. Sometimes they know why. Like they'll often, before I started working specifically with entrepreneurs, I would be working with people. I had a whole program working with cancer survivors because I'm a cancer survivor myself. And there's always everybody that I've spoken to that's a cancer survivor that has gone on to do something great. Generally, there's a moment where they're like, wow, that life, that person, that I was, I don't want that anymore. I'm going to move forward into some other direction. And I have a really good friend. Her name is Jody. She's one of the executive members of Be More You, the Purpose Project. She talks about how, we get on these 8-lane highways of existence. So we go on autopilot. Our patterns, our ways we interact with people, they become so ingrained with us. They become like an 8-lane highway. And generally, when we feel stuck, if we want something different that's not on that 8-lane highway, we have to hack a goat path through the bush with a machete to try to get to what we want. And then it takes a long time of rewiring those neural pathways to get to where that goat path is a trail and it becomes more of a habit. Like it's about creating new habits and creating new ways of being that serve us. And so a lot of the times with my coaching clients, it's like, well, how's that working for you? And if it's not, what do you want to change? Are you creating the experience that you want for your life right now? Because if we're always in choice, and if we always have a choice in everything that we do, which I strongly believe, and everything that how we don't have a choice of what happens to us, but we have a choice how we react to it and move forward through it. If we're always in choice, then we can change what our results are. We can say, okay, yeah, I'm not creating the experience that I want. Like if I'm in a fight, if things aren't good with one of my boys or with my husband or my mom, I can be like, wow, am I creating the experience that I want right now? No. Who do I want to be? What do I need to change? Because I can't control them. I can only control what I say and do and act how I am.
And I love that highway analogy, because sometimes, we try so hard to get on the fast lane, so to speak, so we can get to the end quicker. But then it's like, so what's the point? Wouldn't it be more interesting or maybe more eventful. If we occasionally take those highway exit, have a little detour, look at what's on offer, maybe a little town here, maybe a little,
Yeah.
ocean view there, and then get back on the highway, and then we will still get to where we want to be. Like, there's always the end in everyone's life in that
Yeah.
sense, but
Well,
wouldn't it
and
be
I
more
mean,
interesting?
when I was sick, that was my detour. And it was an unintended detour. It was like that when the GPS glitches, right? You're going off completely different direction. And what happens, it's like, I go back. When I went back to work, I realized that something had shifted in me.
Mm.
It's like a classic movie line, like Finding Nemo, right?
Yes.
We all want to stay safe in Finding Nemo, where with Marlin. Have you watched it?
Yes, of course.
Yes. I was going to say you have little ones. Where the dad, Marlin, he wants to keep everybody safe on the
Yes.
reef, right? And then there's this big adventure, and then you go back and you're like, oh, okay, I'm a different person now.
Yes,
Or
it's
fish.
scary, but if you don't do it, you may
Yeah.
regret it. And the thing is that we don't have that 360 view. We don't have the full picture. All we see is the
No.
immediate next step. But sometimes, if your heart tells you you gotta jump, then I mean, obviously, you take educated guess or you prepare yourself. But I think it is a scary thing, but it's important. And I think when you talk about one of the article you wrote, it's called like the next 30 years, and I think when you ask the question, then it becomes an invitation to think a little bit bigger than your immediate step. So just like echoing what you said before, who do you want to be? How do you want you to be perceived by the people you love around you? And that's actually directly related to the question of what you want your next 30 years to look like, because it cultivate that environment, cultivate that person you want to be. So I love that article, but tell us a little bit about, because it's a story related to your father, and you were I think turning 46 or something, and then in the next 30 years it'll become where your father passed away. So tell us a little bit of the article, and also what do you want your next 30 years to look like?
Okay. So I lost my dad when he was 76, which was only 2 years ago. And it was actually a part of becoming the unstuck duck. It was kind of the time when I was in the middle of a big change in my life, and he got sick. And so Tim McGraw is a country singer, and he writes a song. He wrote a song on his 30th birthday. Actually, I think he probably just sang it. It was somebody else must have written it, but maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, it talks about, in my next 30 years, I'm going to do things different and better than in my first 30 years. And I had this moment where the music came on, the song came on, and I was thinking about my next 30 years. It wasn't a birthday of mine. It just happened to be that I looked at the calendar, looked at myself, and I was 46 at the time. And I was like, oh, well, 30 years from now, I'll be the same age as my dad and my grandma when they passed away. And I had this moment where I was like, ooh, my next 30 years, I can be intentional about what I want, who I want to be, who I want to engage with, who do I want to help. Not necessarily creating a bucket list, like, oh, I want to go bungee jumping and I need to jump out of a plane. I'm not going to do any of those things because I don't want to do those things. That's not part of my who I want to be, but it's who I want to be. Mm-hmm. It's not what I want to do. When I think about a bucket list, I think more about, places I want to see and things I want to do. To me, I want to be the parent to my grown children, where like I want my guys to find spouses that want to engage with me, like that want to have me as part of their life. Like, I don't want to be that mother-in-law that's like, this is, exactly. Like, and really looking and going, with every step I take, with every intentional space I take up, I have the opportunity to make a difference in this world, whether it's, big or little. I just actually wrote, there was a quote I posted this morning on my page. It was a Napoleon Hill. It was about, if you can't do great things, then do small things great. And I love that quote because I think about, I'm not going to necessarily change the world on every day, not every day, but I have the opportunity to make a difference with every interaction that I make. I like to think about my ideal me. Some coaches, and in fact, I have a book that I've read called Playing Big by Tara Moore. And that book changed my life completely. But she has a meditation that you go kind of forward 20 years and meet 20 years from now, you, right? And really visualize, where does she live? What does she do? What is she wearing? What type of wisdom does she have to give to you? And I think about me in 20 years, who I want to be. 20 years is not a long time. It sounds like a long time, but I remember very clearly having a 4-month-old, and I didn't feel like that was a long time ago.
Oh gosh.
So it amazes me that, that's only 18 birthdays until they can vote. Well, here in Canada, but I don't know how old you can be to vote down there, but like, that's not a lot. And it goes by really fast. So in every moment that I have, where I have the choice of who I want to be, I can look and say, okay, well, I mean, even, I was hungry the other day and I was like, okay, well, I could drive through and get a Big Mac, but does that get me to the healthy version of me that I want to be? No. Does it satisfy a craving right now? Yes. Does it make me feel shitty after? Yes. Does it get me closer to who it is that I want to be? No. And that's my question. Is that, who is it that I want to be? And does this decision that I'm making right now, if I'm going to, cut off somebody in traffic and flip them a bird and, be angry, is that who I want to be? No, it's not. So I have the choice to cut those things out of my life and those actions that I do.
Yeah, it's beautiful because I think what you touch on reminds me that, if you want to play big or do something big and great, actually, you kind of need to look at the small, day to day, moment by moment, decision by decision to be who you all want to be in a 30 years time. Like you say, the healthier you, the small decision is a Big Mac or a healthy sandwich. It may be a small thing, but if you look at moment by moment, that's when someone becomes great. I don't think Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr. start out as I'm going to be this. No, it's moment by moment, step by step. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And what you say, and one of the quote you wrote in that blog was, living life with purpose on purpose is a muscle that needs to be exercised. First of all, we need to train that muscles. And this is exactly what it is. When you are conscious, when you try to make the right decision moment by moment, that's your training wheel, isn't it?
Yeah, you don't become a marathon runner in it overnight. It takes a lot of training, and that goat path is not going to become an easy 8-lane highway to a new way without some work, without some intention, without some appreciation for the failures and for the moments that you've slipped. That's all data. Like, you're just collecting data. Whenever something happens that doesn't go according to your plan, it's like, oh, okay, so that's not going to work. I can take that off of the list of things that I might try. And, it's just, when I talk about living life with purpose, on purpose, it's a day-to-day intention. It's a day-to-day moment. And we can bob like a cork in the ocean if we want, letting life, sway us from side to side, or we can be like, hey, you know what? This is not what I want. This is what I want. I'm going to move forward towards what it is that I want. And I think a lot of the times we're ingrained to think that it's selfish to do what you want. We have this thing of, oh yeah, always gets what he wants. And we say it like, oh yeah, well, of course you're going to get what you want. And when children are little, it feels like they're a bit spoiled when they get what they want. But
Untitled.
why? That makes no sense to me, right? Like it makes no sense to me. If I want to be 150 pounds, I don't know if you go in pounds or kilos, whatever.
So
Where,
where?
yeah, whatever. You know, like if I want to be healthy, let's say that, then why would I expect that I can be healthy like that if I'm not currently doing the things that get me there? And when I work with my entrepreneur clients, you know, they have this idea of I'm going to either arrive, like I'm successful. I have arrived. Well, there's a lot of stuff you got to do between now and getting successful. There's like, you know, write that blog post, get that feedback, get a shitty review. You might get a shitty review and then be like, oh my God, and then change something about your program because of that review. And then maybe you might try changing that review, that because of that review, and realize that that review was just somebody's opinion and that doesn't matter to you. It's all data. It's all just figuring it out. And we're all just figuring it out one step at a time. Every one of us.
Yeah, it's true, and I really agree that you can want what you want as long as you're not just feeling entitled, because you do need to take your action. You need to learn from the bad review, because I think once someone talked about it, that no matter what you do, there will be critics. There will be people who love your work, and yes, you need to cherish those people, and you need to, you know, write more for those people, because they support your work and they appreciate your work. But those who criticize you, you need to look at that criticism. Is that maybe 90% is based on untrue fact, but what if the 10% that actually can, or even 1%, can help you to improve and do better? We should look at it instead of just dismiss it. And it's about learning from all of this rather than you know, turning away and not looking at it as an opportunity. So I think this is
oftentimes what's super interesting to me is that, first of all, everybody has an opinion, right? And sometimes those people are not my ideal client.
Yes.
So why am I trying to please them?
Yeah. They may not be your people.
They're not my people. And I had the situation actually where I had a program that I offered, and then I got a bunch of feedback from different places. It was not just the people that did, but the people that wanted something different. And I was like, okay, I'll implement all these changes and make it different. And one of the pieces was, the first program I did it in the morning, and in the second one I did it in the evening, because people were like, I want one, but I work and I want to have one in the evening, and I want your time in the evening. It took me doing one of the calls to realize that I'm not an evening person. I'm not going to be at my best at that time of day. And I had to and what was funny, another piece of the advice or feedback that I got was that it was too short. So I did a 1 month, and so it was too short. So I did my second one as 6 weeks in the evening. So not only did I change, like I changed them both. And then I was like, oh my God, now I have to spend 6 weeks learning this lesson. 6 weeks I have to do this lesson.
Clearly you got it. You know, you need to be you. You need to do you.
Yeah, and I had that moment where I was like, wow, you know, I realized that I know that I needed to learn that. And all of that learning has made me go, okay, you know what? My next one's going to be in the morning again.
And it's not going to be 6 weeks.
What was super funny was the people that wanted in the evening, that came to the evening, they had the same thing where they're like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Like, I'm not even, and I was like, okay, here we are. It was super funny, but you know, that's how we learn. And I think as entrepreneurs, and particularly women entrepreneurs, we are shaped, back to your original question, we're shaped by by other people's expectations, by our social conditioning, and then by the expectations that we create around all the things that we've learned in our life. So the context that we have about entrepreneurship and what it should be like. Classic is the idea that, you know, you have to work your ass off. Like you have to be burning the candle at both ends and busting your butt and making, that's not true.
Or like being everything to everyone all the
Everything
time.
to everyone, and nobody can be happy or unhappy. Like everybody has to be happy. It's like none of that is true. We have these contexts around it where it's like, actually, you know what? You can do what makes you happy.
Mm.
If you don't like writing, get someone else to do your writing. If you don't want to go live on Facebook, don't go live on Facebook.
Yes.
If you don't want to have a podcast, don't have a podcast. Do what fills your cup.
Yeah, you do.
Because the people that care and the people that want to be part of your business are going to be there.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't want to do a Facebook Live because you're really bad at it, the people that are watching you do a really bad Facebook Live, who won in that situation? And what is it, so it's just, I'm not saying don't try something new
But be honest, I think all
honest
comes down to what you said at the beginning, that you got to know who you are and do you.
Yeah, if you don't want to have a program in the evening, don't do a program in the evening.
I think this is the perfect time to wrap up, to let people know that, come back to your original, what we said, that from what you have experienced and learned and done, which is, be who you really are and be aware of that, and moment by moment that build up a life that is on purpose, and hopefully you will become the person who you really want to be at the end. So
yeah, well, and ultimately you're the one that you live with.
Yes.
Right? And
you can't divorce yourself.
No. And we could go through life making choices that make us miserable, and then that's on us. It's on us. And sometimes we get really attached to our story, our misery story. Like we get really attached to why we're, so victim, or woe is me, or, we get really attached to those stories because we get something out of it, right? We get the pity, or we get the experience, or we get whatever it is, we get to be right. Sometimes it's just that. But there's always a consequence to that. Your happiness and fulfillment is at stake. And at some point we get to choose ourselves.
What do you want? Do you want more like people identify with your pain and your suffering and your injustice? Yeah. Or do you want to be more identified with happiness, fulfillment, daring, wholeheartedness, and make a few mistakes, but have a great laugh about it?
Yeah, exactly. People will appreciate that more, and you will be way happier.
I can think of this is a perfect place to wrap up this podcast. I'm so happy that we have this conversation. I can't believe it. In half an hour, I think we dive really deep into something that, can really change someone's perspective on what's important, and how do we live on purpose in the next 30 years. So now, if people want to connect with you, work with you, or maybe learn more about your coaching program, your coaching work, what's the best way to find you online?
Well, you can find me at unstuckduck.ca because I'm in Canada. So that's where so unstuckduck.ca, or I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at unstuckduck. And just reach out, or info@unstuckduck.ca. You can email me.
I will have the links on my blog post and the details on the podcast as well. So thank you so much, Terry. It's wonderful. And I'm really excited to share this interview, and hopefully I think it will be like in a couple of months, because I'm so ahead of this, but I think it will be perfect for people actually also thinking about what's important for them next year. What's a new intention? I don't really do New Year resolution, but I like New Year plans or intention and what's look forward to in the next year. So thank you so much for your time today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.